So, you have to ask yourself, how does $6 billion just disappear? How does a company that was the talk of Wall Street, sitting on what was supposed to be the gold find of the century, just vanish? Well, the answer is way stranger and honestly a lot more thrilling than you could ever imagine.
Because this whole thing, it kicks off with a crazy scene. Right before the world's biggest secret was about to blow wide open, the one man who knew everything, Chief Geologist Michael de Guzman, reportedly fell from a helicopter, disappearing forever into that dense jungle down below.
This is the wild story of Bre-X Minerals. It's probably the most spectacular, most audacious financial fraud in the history of mining. A story of incredible hype, high-stakes politics, and a crash that echoed all around the globe.
All right, so let's get into it. To really understand the spectacular crash, you first have to understand the mind-blowing rise. And believe me, it all started from practically nothing, with a tiny company being run out of a basement in Calgary. Picture this. It's 1989. Bre-X Minerals is the absolute definition of a penny stock, trading for a measly 30 cents a share. The founder, David Walsh, was so broke he had to declare personal bankruptcy. The company was just a total gamble, going nowhere fast. And then, everything changed. They took a long shot on this super remote piece of land in the Indonesian jungle called Busang, and the results? They started reporting they were just unbelievable. At first, it was a couple million ounces of gold, which suddenly became 30 million, then 60, and then a jaw-dropping 70 million ounces. The stock just went ballistic, soaring to over $280 a share.
Now here's where the psychology of the market really takes over, because it wasn't just small-time folks getting caught up in the hype. We're talking about the big dogs, the top analysts on Bay Street and Wall Street. That fear of missing out, it was just massive. A powerful herd mentality kicked in. I mean, when all the experts are saying it's real, who are you to doubt it? The hype felt completely bulletproof. At its peak, this company that started in a basement was valued at over $6 billion. From 30 cents a share to a multi-billion-dollar giant, it was the ultimate fairy tale story on the stock market. But, you know, the clock was about to strike midnight. When you find something this big, it doesn't stay a secret for long. And governments, well, they tend to notice. This is where the story starts to get a little dark. The Indonesian regime at the time was, well, let's just say it was known for playing by its own rules. They saw all those dollar signs, and they basically looked at this small Canadian company and said, "That's a nice little gold find you've got there. Be a real shame if something happened to it." It was pretty clear Bre-X was going to have to play ball. So after a whole lot of messy political arm twisting, a deal was finally hammered out. But get this, Bre-X would now only own 45% of its own discovery. The rest was carved up between the government and a huge American mining company, Freeport McMoRan, who was brought in to actually build the mine. And that right there, that was the crucial turning point, because a new partner meant a fresh set of eyes.
See, Freeport McMoRan wasn't about to drop billions of dollars based on blind faith. Before they committed anything, they had to do their own homework. It's a standard industry practice, and it's called due diligence. So they sent their own geologists into the jungle. They started drilling their own test holes just feet away from where Bre-X had been reporting these spectacular finds. They collected their own rock samples and sent them to their own labs. You can just imagine the terror setting in for the Bre-X team on the ground. The clock was officially ticking.
And then, just as that moment of truth was about to arrive, the whole thing just explodes into this full-blown thriller. Michael de Guzman, the guy at the very center of the whole discovery, gets summoned to the site to meet with the Freeport team. He never made it. The official story was suicide. But the questions started piling up immediately.
A week later, Freeport dropped the bombshell. Their test results showed only, and I'm quoting here, insignificant amounts of gold. The market panicked. As a last resort, Bre-X hired another independent consultant. As you can see from their letter right there, their conclusion was the final nail in the coffin. It was blunt. It said an economic gold deposit had not been identified. So how on earth did they do it? Well, the method was almost laughably simple. It's a classic mining scam called salting. De Guzman and his team were literally just adding gold to the rock samples. In the beginning, he was shaving flakes of gold off his own wedding ring. When that wasn't enough, he spent over 60 grand buying raw gold from local river panners and just mixing it into the samples. It was the biggest, most elaborate salting scam in history.
So now let's talk about the crash.
Once the word got out that it was all a scam, the financial fallout was, immediate and absolutely catastrophic.
I mean, just look at this chart. It's a total and complete wipeout. From a peak of over $286, the stock just nosedived to zero. $6 billion in market value, gone. Wiped out in just a few days. Investors lost everything.
And this is the really tragic part. The victims here weren't just big-shot speculators. We're talking about some of Canada's biggest, most conservative pension funds. The retirement savings for teachers, public servants, city workers. They lost hundreds of millions, right alongside tens of thousands of regular people who'd bet their life savings on this dream.
The company that was once the absolute darling of the stock market was officially dead. The dream was totally over.
But hold on, the story doesn't quite end with the bankruptcy. The aftermath of Bre-X is this tangled mess of suspicious deaths, legal fights, and questions that, to this day, still haven't been answered.
The biggest mystery, of course, is Michael de Guzman. The official story is suicide. But come on, the body was so decomposed it was basically unidentifiable. Was he murdered to keep him quiet? Or did the mastermind of this whole scheme just fake his own death and escape with millions? His own wife said she never believed for a second he was dead.
And get this, the founder, David Walsh, who always claimed he was a victim too, moved to the Bahamas and died of a brain aneurysm a year later. The other main geologist, John Felderhof, was the only one ever charged with anything, and he was acquitted of insider trading. In the end, not a single person was ever criminally convicted for the $6 billion fraud.
But if there's one tiny, positive thing to come out of all this, it's this. The whole scandal was such a black eye for the Canadian mining industry that it forced regulators to finally do something. They created this whole new, strict set of rules called NI 43101. It was designed specifically to protect investors and make sure a fraud of this scale could never, ever happen again.
The story of Bre-X is just this timeless, cautionary tale. It forces all of us to ask a really tough question. In a market that's just drowning in hype, when that fear of missing out is deafening and all the experts are chanting the same thing, how do you find the discipline to step back and figure out if you're looking at real gold or just a handful of glitter?